Viridian, The Green Guide, written by Clouds, read by Distracted by Books. Chapter 28, Damage Control. Shouta really wished he could just crawl into his sleeping bag and pass out. But unfortunately, he had paperwork. Maybe Tsukauchi would let him finish it another day. No, he'd pulled that yesterday, so if he skipped out again, that would just mean more work later, which was illogical. None of that meant he had to be happy about having to listen to Amplifier's incessant rambling next to him, though. Yeah, so I still totally miss that bartender. I wonder what happened to him, she said as she finished whatever story Shouta had been ignoring. He had the most awesome quirk, too. I think it was called remote vision or something. Basically, as long as he knew where something was, he could see it. No one could get up to anything in that club. How's your redemption group going these days? Tsukauchi asked, and Shouta sent him a half-hearted glare. The woman had just finished a story, and now he was encouraging her to start a new one? Couldn't they just do their paperwork in peaceful silence? Pretty good. There's some real characters this time around, Amplifier said cheerfully. We've also got this kid that volunteered to help out, which has been interesting. Oh, Tsukauchi even sounded interested. The traitor. What are they like? He's Amplifier sighed. Well, I can't really say he's a good kid, considering that I'm half convinced the reason he wanted to volunteer was because he's trying to be less of an a-hole. At least he wants to change, but I just wish I knew how to help him more. If he's actually trying to improve, then at least he's got some potential. Shouta couldn't help saying, half the kids I expel get kicked out because they're not willing to put in that kind of effort. Yeah, but he's a problem child, Amplifier whined. It's been weeks, and I just barely got him to stop just standing by the wall the whole time and actually talk to people. Speaking of problem children, how's yours doing, Eraser? Tsukauchi asked. I don't think anyone heard from Viridian last night. Do you think he's going AWOL again? Shouta groaned loudly and dropped his head onto the desk in exhaustion and frustration. Not unless he breaks his arm again. Wait, the kid broke his arm? Amplifier screeched so loud that Shouta had to sit up and cancel her quirk. When did that happen? Apparently about 5 weeks ago. Shouta sighed. Kid didn't tell me how it happened, but that's why he's been keeping off the streets. Well, until last night, when he apparently got bored and decided it was a good idea to go gallivanting on the rooftops in a cast. Amplifier snorted. Yeah, that sounds like Viridian, all right. Reckless as ever. Still, it's good he didn't go missing because of what we originally thought. Tsukauchi pointed out, do you think you were overreacting about him being suicidal now that you've seen him again, Eraser? Shouta shook his head. He was acting a little happier, but then he trailed off with a grimace. Yeah, yelling at a suicidal kid to stay alive hadn't been his proudest moment. There had to have been better ways to get his point across without ruining what little trust the kid had in him. But there wasn't anything he could do about that now except hope that he hadn't ruined everything. Then what? Amplifier asked. What's wrong? Shouta sighed. We got in a fight. You're a hero, Eraser. Getting into fights is what you do. Tsukauchi deadpanned. Not with a villain. Hold up. Your Amplifier looked at him incredulously. Are you saying you got into a fight with Viridian? What were you trying to do? Arrest him? I was trying to get him to drop it. Shouta growled. Look, long story short, Queen Bee is back, which means that the villain factory is making a move, and Viridian is knee-deep in it. He figured out that the bees were the injection method for our recent rash of instant villains, and went back to the scene during the day to recover one of them. Turns out they're robotic and can be hacked, which is something I need to bring up with Netsu. But it's not something that a teenager should be poking around in. He's a vigilante, Amplifier argued. Sticking his nose into things he shouldn't is pretty much what he does. You can't get mad at the kid for that. I know, he sighed. When he disappeared, I seriously thought the kid was dead. I was looking at obituaries just to make sure he wasn't in them. I don't want to have to go through that again, or worse, worry about him getting kidnapped and experimented on, just because he ran headfirst into a situation he wasn't equipped to deal with. Vigilantes deal with petty crime, not highly organized villain groups. You think the villain factory is going to start running experiments again? Tsukauchi sounded worried. Should we be expecting more next-level villains? The kid thinks the factory is probably moving into the next phase in their experiments, and I'm inclined to agree with him, Shouta said. Whatever that next phase is, I can guarantee it won't be pretty. Tsukauchi let out a deep exhale. Okay, I'll let the police know to be on high alert. If we see anything that even seems like it could be the villain factory, we'll let you know right away. Thanks, Shouta said. Now I just need to get the kid to talk to me again. Hopefully after he gets his cast off. Did he say when that was going to be? Amplifier asked. As fun as it is to have him hack into my comms, I kind of miss seeing him around. And I know I'm not the only one. Even Rocklock was complaining that he hadn't gotten an actual marble from him yet. It should be sometime this week, Shouta shrugged. Kid didn't give me an exact day. He was too busy insisting that he was healed enough to be on the rooftops, and I was too busy trying to get him to go home so he didn't break his arm again. It was a fun time. Amplifier giggled. Be careful, Eraser. Your inner dad is showing. Actually, I think it's too late for that. Tsukauchi grinned. He's got his heart on his sleeve already. Shouta glared at them. I hate brats. Sure thing. Amplifier smiled mischievously. Eraser dad. Shouta activated his quirk as Amplifier and Tsukauchi had the audacity to laugh at him. Either get me coffee or get the frick out. Dr. Daruma Ujiko sighed as he looked at the feral, well, he couldn't quite be called a man anymore, but the thing that was currently trying to cut through the bars to get at him. Despite their success in modifying the subjects' bodies, the minds were another problem entirely. Or maybe it was just this specific subject. Crabs weren't naturally the most intelligent creatures, after all. The doctor didn't have any problems forcing mutations on his subjects, especially not in subjects like this one that had a natural mutative aspect to their quirks. It was a simple enough task with a high enough quantity of trigger and other drugs, all of which Sensei was more than willing to provide. No, the problem came from the natural limits of the quirk itself. As many experiments as they ran, the increased quirk strength immediately returned to normal levels as soon as trigger was no longer being introduced into the system, which simply wouldn't do it all. Sensei wanted a tool that would showcase his prowess at a moment's notice without the need for constant assistance from chemicals. So that was what he would get. To maintain the quirk's strength without the drug, however, the quirk needed to be forced to achieve singularity. After his dismal failure trying to do this with drugs alone, however, Daruma had finally discovered a working solution making use of Sensei's quirk. Sensei would take the quirk in question, then, making use of a multiplier quirk he had acquired a few decades ago, create multiple copies of the quirk all jumbled together and give them back to the subject. Theoretically, the body should already be equipped to handle its own quirk, especially with the extra modifications that Daruma had added. Theoretically, the fact that it was the same quirk, only stronger, should bypass that annoying little glitch that Sensei had discovered centuries ago that caused brain damage in those that had multiple quirks forced into them. Theoretically, this should have been the last experiment necessary to create the perfect superhuman weapon. In reality, theory only took one so far. While the brain recognized the modified quirk jumble as its own, it was still technically multiple quirks, which meant that the body attacked itself in an attempt to get rid of what wasn't supposed to be there. The end result was that the subject was still capable of independent actions, but only those that were motivated by rage, since the emotional centers were largely undamaged by the experiments. Which brought the doctor back to where he was now, looking at the monster he had created. The rage itself was not a problem. In fact, it simply made the monster more destructive, which would fit Sensei's goals well. But currently that rage was directed toward himself, which was far too dangerous. Daruma sighed. It lacked the finesse of his normal experiments, but training and pain had been used to adjust the behavior of animals for centuries, and it would mold what was left of the monster's brain into what Sensei wanted. While not a complete success, the experiment was still useful, if only for how destructive this monster had the potential to be. Now, to make it follow orders. End of chapter.